Chelsea Jensen here. Today we are going to make a broccoli and cheddar soup with some ham and cheese melt on our homemade sourdough bread. And then we are going to make some pumpkin cheesecake bars. So let's start by making our graham cracker crust for our pumpkin cheesecake bars. You're going to use some graham cracker crumbs. You need about 1.5 cups, and this looks like 1.5 cups to me. So we're going to start. We're going to pour this in our bowl. And then we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of sugar and a 1/2 cup of melted butter. We'll mix that up, and then we're going to pop it in the oven and let it bake up. Because the trick with cheesecake bars is you want to bake that crust up a little bit. Otherwise, your bar the crust base can get soggy. So definitely make sure you do that pre-bake and don't just press the graham cracker crust down, which you can do with a lot of graham cracker crusts on certain things. But for this, because pumpkin has more moisture in it, you want to pre-bake this crust so it doesn't get soggy. So we're going to mix this up. Again, we've got 1/2 cup of melted butter, 1/4 cup of sugar with our, 1.5 cups of graham cracker crumbs. Here we go. And now I like to have a really thick crust on my bars. And so I'm going to do mine in an 8x8. And I've kind of altered my ingredients. You could always spread this out in a 9x13 and then just kind of double up the middle ingredients for that. But I've kind of altered this so that I get a nice thick crust on it for it. So we're going to put all of this in here. There we go. Just making sure I get all this crumbs. And then we're going to spread it down, and this is going to give us that really thicker crust, which will make them so delicious. We're going to press this down, and you want to firmly press it, get any air pockets out. If you don't press it firmly, then your crust will fall apart. So I'm just using a bit of wax paper, but you can use parchment paper as well. But we're going to press this down. If you want to line your baking sheet with parchment paper, you can. I've got like the non-stick one, so it always slides out and cuts really easily. Okay. Now we're going to pop this in our oven to bake up while we make the other parts of our base. Because again, you want this pre-bake so that it gives you a nice, good, crunchy crust instead of a soft one. So 350 and for like 5 to 10 minutes, just enough time for us to prep up all of our other ingredients, and then we'll take it out and then put it back in later.
You have a question? Where can they find the recipe?
So we will upload this video, our stream, onto the link on our page. So you can always watch it again and recreate the recipes from there. And I might make this a recipe card for this week. We'll see. I like to pick 3 or so recipes each week, and I make a recipe card for my members so that, they can recreate one of our things with a recipe card. But for everybody, we do put all of our live streams up there for you guys. We're going to add here 1 cup of pumpkin puree. Don't do pumpkin pie filling or anything like that. You want pumpkin puree, just good old plain Jane. Here we go. And then we're going to add in a cup of cream cheese. And we're going to be doing cream cheese in 2 parts. We're going to have a cream cheese swirl, and then we have our pumpkin cream cheese part. So we're going to add in about 1 cup. And I'm going to, eyeball my cup because it's kind of a pain. But, 1 cup is 8 ounces. So just one of those, fat little bars. Now, if you want to do this in a 9x13, you're just going to double this part. That looks close to 1 cup. We're going to use a little bit more in just a sec. So we've got our cup of cream cheese. We've got our cup of pumpkin puree. We're going to add in 1 egg. There we go. And we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And then we're going to whip all this together once we get our spices in here. Here we go. So a half a cup of granulated sugar. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And there we go. And then a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And then after our cinnamon, we're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. So we're just adding a bit more spices than just a pumpkin pie spice, but you could always just double up really and just kind of do 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice as well, if you don't want to have to add in a bunch of different little ones. And then the nutmeg, just a little bit of it, like, you know, a 1/4 of a teaspoon, a little pinch, a little shake in there. Nutmeg has definitely a stronger flavor, but it is lovely. And it just kind of gives you that little extra oomph. And then we're going to add in a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We'll also be using vanilla in our kind of cream cheese swirl. Here we go. Let's get our whisks here, and we're gonna whisk, or not whisk, but we're gonna egg beat this together because we want it to be nice and creamy. And this is gonna be our, you know, pumpkin cheesecake base for it. So we'll get this all whisked together. There we go. And we're just gonna mix it until it's nice and, you know, no more cream cheese lumps to it. It works best when your cream cheese is soft, so I had mine sitting out for just a few minutes before we're ready, you know. There we go. Now whisk this up. So once I kind of get all those cream cheese chunks out, we'll know that it's ready. There we go. And then I'm just going to get my spatula and give it a good stir down because we've got a little bit of pumpkin here on the side. And we'll mix this. This is going to be the pumpkin like cheesecake part of it for our little pumpkin cheesecake bars. And then we're going to make our broccoli and cheddar soup and our ham and cheddar grilled cheeses here. Okay, so we've got our pumpkin base part for it. Now we're going to make our cream cheese swirl part. So we're going to need a half a cup of cream cheese for this. We don't need quite as much for the other one. So that should be good. And now for this one, instead of using a whole egg, we're just going to be using the yolk of it. So I'm just going to pop that in there. I'm going to go give my hands a quick wash now. And then we're going to add in a half a teaspoon of vanilla and a 1/4 cup of sugar. And real simple, and then we'll mix these together. And this is our cream cheese swirl base. You know, that really pretty swirl you have in like the cheesecake bars or the pumpkin cheesecakes. That's what this is going to make. And let's add in our 1/4 cup of sugar. A little bit more. And then we're going to kind of whisk these together. Since these are all going in one thing, I'm not even going to worry about cleaning the pumpkin off my beaters because this little amount of pumpkin won't show up. And we're going to whisk these together for this. Again, using softened cream cheese works best. We're mixing our egg yolk in. Let's now speed it up. Get rid of any of those kind of bigger chunks. There we go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So now we've got the two bases for our pumpkin cheesecake bars. Now we can go grab our crust out of the oven because we've got that little pre-bake on it. And that's why I said it's always just pop it in there, let it bake up while we're doing this. And that's just going to prevent it from getting soggy on our final end of our bars. There we go. So we've got our graham cracker crust in here. And so this is, again, 1.5 cups of graham crackers with 1/2 cup of melted butter and a 1/4 cup of sugar. Now we're going to pour in our cream cheese base for this, or not, our pumpkin cream cheese cake base. We're just going to pour it all over the top of this. Beautiful. And now for our other part, what we're going to do, let me grab a knife and a spoon, and we're going to make dollops all the way around, and then we'll do our little swirl with our knife to give you that marbled look. So just simply just dollop this on. And I'll go back and put a little bit more in each dollop. And then is the fun little art project part where we're going to just take our knife, or you can do a spatula, and then you're just going to swirl it back and forth. And that's going to give you the little pretty little marbled kind of technique. So it makes you feel like you're more of an artist than you are. Beautiful. And now we're going to go pop this in the oven. I'm going to grab my oven mitt. It's warm, but. And this is going to bake for around 30 to 35 minutes or so. And until it's still going to be jiggly. You don't want it to crack all the way through, so I'll do it for 30 minutes. You want a little bit of a jiggle in it, and then you have to let it cool for a little bit, and then you pop it in the refrigerator and chill for 4 hours. So I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. That way, this should be done baking when we are finished with everything else. We've got our soup and our sandwiches to make here. So let's get going on this. So let's start. Oh, forgot to grab my knife here. Now, the one thing about cheesecake bars is we'll make them, but you're not going to be able to eat them until dinner tonight because they do have to set and cool in the fridge. So you bake them. They should have a little jiggle when you take them out, but of course not liquid. And then you chill them for about 4 hours before you can cut into them, or, overnight as well. Okay, we've got one big yellow onion here, and we're going to saute this guy up. I'm going to put in about a tablespoon of olive oil in here, and we're going to turn on our burner and let it start kind of heating up. And I'm going to, just do just a regular dice on these. You don't need them super small. Now, I make my broccoli and cheddar soup a little bit different than a lot of people in the fact that I do not like a really gelatinous kind of base to it. A lot of places when you get broccoli and cheddar soup, it's very thick. I like it's a thick broth, but not a super thick broth on there. So I don't put flour in mine as like a thickener at all, really. I just we're going to use half and half, and the cheese kind of thicken it up for it. So it's more of a brothy one, which I love. Let's give this a little bit of a stir here, and we'll let those start to kind of saute up. And you know what? I'm going to grab my garlic out of the fridge. I realized I did not grab it here. Perfect. And we'll get some of this minced up to throw in there. Make sure I've got my fridge shut. And then we will peel and dice our carrots, which I like to add carrots into it. It gives a pop of color, and I think they complement the flavors really well. So we're going to have got, about 6 or so cloves here, because a couple of these are small. We want a good amount of garlic in here because it's going to add a lot of great flavor. So we're going to just mince these guys up, and then we'll add them in with our onions here in just a second.
You have a question. Can you use frozen broccoli?
You can use frozen broccoli. It does work. You want to make sure you've got it like thawed and kind of get some of that extra liquid out. The only issue with frozen broccoli is it's going to disintegrate faster in your soup, and it's not going to keep its shape as well because it's already kind of been waterlogged and pre-cooked, because it's, when vegetables are frozen, they're always blanched first. So you can do it, and it works, but I always recommend using fresh broccoli because I think it just works, gives you a nicer texture than it. But it definitely, in a pinch, you can use frozen. Here we go. So we're going to just mince these guys up. Here we go. So good. Doesn't have to be a super small mince, but you don't want to have any super big chunks in here because this is not a soup that I puree at all. I leave it kind of that broth, because when you cook the broccoli, it will start to disintegrate and kind of break apart. So I find that you really don't need to puree it to make a blend at it at all. Let's get our onions, or not our onions, our carrots peeled and diced. So I've got 4 carrots here. We're going to just peel off this whole outer kind of layer, and then we're going to dice it up. I like to have, we're probably going to quarter it. Maybe some of my skinnier ones will just have. I don't want my carrots to be like big, huge, like circle slices on it, more like a diced carrot. So you're getting like the pop of color, and you're getting that semi-sweet root vegetable flavor, but it's not overpowering. Because again, broccoli is the star of the show of this one. And I use a lot more broccoli in my broccoli and cheddar soup than a lot of places. Mine is pretty chock full of broccoli. It's because I love broccoli. And I will say, my mom always says, she goes, I never like broccoli and cheddar soup, but yours I do. So I always take it a compliment that I've converted her on it. So, and I think part of it is I do have a more of a broth base and a lot of broccoli, and I use cheddar cheese. And a lot of, places will use like a Velveeta or pasteurized cheese, but I like to use good old cheddar. Because cheddar is better. Let's get our tops off here. And then for these small ones at the bottom, I'm just going to cut them up because they are teeny. They don't need to be cut up anymore. But once we start getting thicker, I'm going to have. Let's get our soup a little stir here, our onions. And I'm using, this is one of my favorite pots. It's the Stout. I like it because it's a cast iron, but it's not an enamel coated, so you get that skillet cook on it, but still get the Dutch oven kind of cook base too as well. Although, it's funny, I got this as a Christmas present from my mom several years ago, the lid to it, which I feel like I rarely ever use the lids on my Dutch ovens unless I'm putting them in the oven. has a bunch of Christmas trees on it. So it's one of those things where it's like, without the lid, it fits you around. With the lid, it's out of season half the time. There we go. It's always like, they make, I think Lakers say, or maybe it's Stab, one of them makes a pumpkin-shaped Dutch oven. And I'm like, oh, I really like it. But I'm one of those people that once we go past a holiday, I don't like to use that holiday themed anything. Like my kids' clothes, they can't wear holiday shirts outside of the holiday season time. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do a Christmas shirt past Christmas or Halloween past it. To me, I'm like, I will celebrate it 2 months early, but we will day after, we're done. Gotta wait till next year. Okay. We've got our carrots all diced up here. And give our onions. And then I'm going to drop in our garlic here. And we're going to let our garlic kind of just toast up for a little bit. And I'm just going to let it sit here right in the middle before we mix it in. Get a little bit of that direct heat right away. And then we'll kind of stir it in there.
No question. When do you take your tree down?
I take my tree down typically, I want to say like the second week of January. It goes down pretty quick. Growing up, we always did it on like, I can't remember, it was like January 7th or something like that. There's like some traditional day in Sweden that you take it down. But I typically take it down. We go after, New Year's, and then we go about a week into it, and then I take everything down. And then I feel like my house looks like so naked and bare. And I leave nothing. I don't even leave like winter themed decorations up. I get my Valentine's Day decorations up, and we celebrate Valentine's starting in the middle of January. And then once Valentine's Day ends, I got my St. Patrick's Day. So yeah, I'm a little crazy with my little decorations. Not as crazy as my Halloween and Christmas, but I do have stuff. I'm going to go grab some bay leaves over here. I realized I want to put bay leaves in my soup. There we go. For our broth part. But we've got our garlic in here toasting up. And I will say it smells amazing. And I will say toast your garlic for about a minute before you add in your next vegetable. So it gets things, because once we add the carrot, the garlic's not going to get as much direct heat, but you do want it to toast up well. So we're going to add in our carrots, and these were 4 carrots that we peeled, and we kind of did a smaller kind of dice on it. We're going to give this a good saute here. It smells so good. And then I've got my broccoli here. I had a big bag of broccoli florets, which I washed, and now we're just going to go and kind of chop them up a little bit. Let's just put on there. You can leave them whole if you want to, but I find doing a coarse chop on them allows them to, makes it easier for you to eat it as a soup. Because if you're eating a soup and you try to sit there and spoon like a piece of broccoli this big up, you're going to fail. So give them a little bit of a chop. On here. And this, I will say, I probably have, this was a big Costco bag. It was about like a little more than half of the Costco bag, but all said and done, this is probably like 2 crowns of broccoli. Like if you were to get the broccoli crowns, or I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, like 4 to 5 cups of broccoli diced or chopped up. And you can, this, I will say, for this soup, leaving the stalks on. So if you buy the crowns, you can actually cut up part of that stalk and put it in there as well, because that will add great flavor, and it will be a great veggie in your soup as well. So you don't have to have just the florets. Slide this over here. So again, we'll give these, just chop them up. As you can see, this is going to be a lot of soup, or a lot of broccoli. But I like to have copious amounts of broccoli in my broccoli and cheddar soup. Beautiful. give our carrots a little bit of a stir here. Here, wash my hands. I've been broccolified. And we're going to put in some spices before we add the broccoli in, because the broccoli has so much base to it that the spices won't toast up if we add them in before. So I'm going to turn my mine down to about a medium. And we're not doing too many spices here because the flavors of the broccoli are pretty strong. So, and then the cheddar cheese, but we do want to add about a teaspoon of black pepper. So a couple good shakes around. And then we're going to add in about a teaspoon of smoked paprika. We're going to add a little bit of garlic salt. A couple good shakes, probably about a half a teaspoon there. And then that's really all. Once we've kind of stirred in, let me get my bay leaves. We're going to add in 2 bay leaves here. Because this is going to be more of a broth base, I'm going to leave them, there, we got 2 big ones. Sometimes you pull out and I say 2 and I get like a teeny tiny one, but my first one was pretty big. Okay, we're going to stir this in and we're going to let these spices heat up with the oil and those veggies in there. It's just going to brighten them up and bring out their flavor a lot more for it. Here we go. Get those little hiders on there. Beautiful. Now we can start adding in our broccoli here. I always say that spices toasting up, they don't need a whole lot of time, but they need a little bit before. You see, we practically got this whole guy filled up. Let me wash my hands. And now we're going to give us around. We're going to toast the broccoli up, let it saute for just, a minute or 2, and then we'll start adding in some of our broth. We're also going to use some half and half in this dish. You can also use heavy cream if you want, but we're going to add it in our bases and stages.
Can you go over the spices again?
Yes. So we added in about a teaspoon of black pepper, a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and about a half a teaspoon of garlic salt, and then 2 bay leaves. So pretty simple because broccoli and cheddar are both pretty powerful flavors in this base. So we're going to let this saute up for just a second. For our broth, I've got chicken bouillon. You could also, if you wanted to keep it just veggie, you could do a vegetable bouillon, but I find that the chicken works really well with it. And because I'm going to be using half and half, I think I might only use 3 cups of bouillon or water with our bouillon, and then once we've simmered for a while, we'll add in about a cup of half and half to give our creamy flavor to it. If you're going to be using regular cream, I would do 4 cups of broth with a half a cup of cream. Here we go. Okay. So we're going to start with about, we're going to put in about a cup first. And then we're going to just kind of scrape any of the spices or anything that could have stuck to the bottom of our pan here.
You have a question? Can you leave out the bay leaves?
You can definitely leave out the bay leaves. The bay leaves just add a nice little complexity to the broth, a little aromatic note, but they're not an essential component to this. It just adds a little extra flavor. Here we go. So we've got our first cup in. There, got our second cup. Slide all of this down. Now we can add in our last cup. So our broth should be kind of just enough to cover over the top. Granted, we are going to be adding in about a cup of half and half in here as well for this. So I had about 3, maybe 3.5, a little bit more than 3 cups of broth in here for this. Now we're going to add in a good scoop of our chicken bouillon. This is going to give you the salty flavor base to your broth as well. So you You won't need to add any more salt in here. So about a tablespoon or so. Again, we'll taste it in a little bit and see how those flavors are if I need to add a little bit more in. But now we're just going to let this broccoli simmer up and cook, and it will get nice and tender, and some of those florets will kind of fall apart, and then you'll still have the bases of kind of the root things, but that kind of helps give you this nice chunky broccoli base to it. And then, of course, we've got to shred our cheddar cheese and get all of that in there. Okay, I'm going to flip my cutting board over so I have just a clean for this. And we'll shred our cheddar cheese in just a second. But why don't we start working on our grilled cheeses for thing. So if you wanted to make just like the broccoli and cheddar soup, but you wanted it to have like protein in it, you could add in some diced ham, would work really well with it for it. Thinking on that same note, I decided to do a ham and cheddar grilled cheese because I was like, ooh, these will pair really well together. So let's start off with our sourdough. This is part of our sourdough that we baked up last night. Very, very soft, as you can see, and beautiful. Apparently, I did not cut it evenly last night, so we're gonna have to make one that's a little bit more even than that guy. So this first one, this will be a good slice of toast for us to have later. And now I'm gonna make our slices for our grilled ham and cheddar sandwiches. Here we go. Got one down. And I always say I don't cook my sourdoughs to have a very dark crust because I like the crust to be more chewy than crunchy. And I feel like, especially when you're going to eat the bread the next day or toast it up, having it a slightly blonder color is going to make it less crunchy the next day.
You have a question? How do you make the sourdough bread?
So the sourdough bread is a journey. It's not something you can just say, hey, I want sourdough bread and wake up. So you got to start with a starter, which takes about 7 days to make. I do have videos and recipe cards that are available for everybody on how you can make your own starter, because it is just flour and water mixed together that sit on your counter and ferment, and you feed it every day and you throw bits apart. So I do have videos on how you can do that. And then I also have a recipe card and videos on how you can make your first sourdough bread, which is using your starter plus flour, water, and salt. So there's not very many ingredients in it, but it does take time. It takes about 24 hours before you can, eat the loaf that you're prepping up, because it has a lot of proofing time and rest time and sitting in your fridge time. So that being said, it is a great journey. It is fun. There's so many things that you can use with sourdough discard, which is what you throw away from your starter when you're feeding it to make it nice and active. So there's so many things you can make with that discard as well. Like I think yesterday we made buttercup squash mini loaves with a streusel topping that had our sourdough discard in it. And they were a hit. I think I have one mini loaf left out of the 8. So one sad little loaf over there. And I'm pretty sure that when my kids get home or when it will be gone. It probably would have been gone earlier if Jack had known there was any left. Okay, we've got our butter on one side of each slice of our bread. So now that I've got those here, we'll pop these right over here. And I'm going to start turning on my skillet here on about a 5, so medium heat, for it to start heating up and toasting. Let's take a little break to stir this, and I'm going to turn it down to about a 4 now that we've got a good simmer on it. Beautiful. Now we'll add our cream in, or we're going to use half and half today, and our cheddar cheese after this has simmered for a while. I don't like to do it too soon because you can separate your milk from your thing. It can curdle. But let's try our broth base, knowing that I want it to be a little bit more flavorful now because we're going to be adding in some half and half to dilute it. I do think I want to add in a little bit more chicken bouillon. Not much, because when we add in our cheddar cheese, that's also going to add a little salty note to it, but I think I need about a teaspoon more. There we go. Just a small amount. Much better. Okay. We've got this going. We're going to do ham and cheddar because I feel like the cheddar just works really well with the broccoli and the cheddar cheese in the soup. So now when I'm making my grilled cheeses, we are going to layer them on. Just make sure you don't have any that's hanging over your bread, because otherwise that will melt down and burn on your skillet, and you don't want that. So here we go. Turn that down just a smidge. The nice things are these sandwiches are pretty big sandwiches. So this all actually is for 4 people, because each one of these sandwiches will cut in half. They're pretty big.
So you have a question. How do you know when your starter is ready for bread?
So once when you feed it, it bubbles up. And if it has doubled in size within the 4 to 8 hours after feeding it is giving it flour, that's when you know it's ready to start making bread. And so anytime you do make bread, you need to feed your starter about 4 to 8 hours before you start prepping your loaf for it. So if your house is hot and you keep it warm, it's going to ferment faster and you'll be able to make bread quicker. If your house is on the colder side, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. I find that in the winter, my house, it takes a little bit longer for all of my like sourdough breads to proof. I give them about an extra hour of proofing time, and same thing with my starter, so I don't mess up, and have an under fluffed loaf. But again, we said, there's times where I've had my starter out, and I remember this last year distinctly because it was one of the coldest nights here in Tennessee. And one of my kids left the door to the outside open. They didn't shut it all the way, and the garage door blew open. So I came in, and our house was like 55 degrees. And I didn't think about it at the time, and I tried to make some sourdough bread, and it was a very, very dense flat bread because it did not have the pop, because it was just too cold to get the good pop on it, the proof time. So it would have been fine if I had left it for an extra couple of hours to proof. But I was just kind of following my basic schedule. And now I follow more visual cues than just being like, oh, I know I fed that then. And that tends to help me, have a better loaf every time. I still make mistakes though, a lot. Okay, we've got our cheddar between our ham slices here. We'll get these on. We got them cooking up. Let's start shredding. Let me see how much time we have. Okay, like 5 minutes left on that. So we are getting down to the last bit. I recommend when you're doing broccoli and cheddar soup to use a block of cheddar cheese versus like pre-shredded, because pre-shredded has anti-caking agent on it, which will give you more of a grit in your soup.
I have a question. Can you use whole milk instead of cream?
You can. It's going to be a thinner and less rich soup. So with that in mind, what I would do to kind of make up for that is probably reduce your broth down to maybe like 2.5 cups of broth, and then do about 2.5 cups of milk to give you that nice creamier texture to it for it. That's why a lot of people will use flour as a thickening agent, but you could then pull a little bit of it out, put either some flour or cornstarch in it. I would use cornstarch to just thicken it up a little bit if you're going to do it that way. But you definitely could, or you could always use a can of evaporated milk. That's a little bit richer than whole milk to give you just a slightly more creamy flavor to it. We're going to use, I've got about a cup of cheddar cheese here. I'm going for about 2 cups of cheddar cheese in this soup. That's going to also help kind of thicken it up nicely. go. Let's see. Yeah, I always kind of visually give a little bit more. Now you can, if you already have shredded cheddar cheese in a bag, definitely you can use it. You'll just need about a bag of it. That's because the bag holds about 2 cups. There we go. Oh, gotta pay the cameraman. Oh, he's sad. You need more? Okay. Gotta slide the broccoli off of it because he might die. Okay. Gotta pay the cameraman tax. I actually should. If you've seen the video, there's the dog tax where you've got to pay the cheese tax to the dog. So this is apparently I just need to throw a slice of cheese at him. Okay. Looks like we've got it nice. A good simmer on it. The bright green lets you know that the broccoli is tender. So we're going to add in a cup of our half and half. Now you could also do 4 cups of broth with about a half a cup of cream to kind of get that same creamy flavor. Slide this guy in here. And I might add in more once I get to it, but I always like to kind of taste it first. But you don't need a whole lot, I will say. A little can go a long way to giving you a rich kind of creamy broth for it. And then we're going to add our cheese in stages. I don't like to add it all at one time. So we're going to start with, 1 handful, and we're going to let it just sit there and melt and heat up, and then we'll stir it in. I find if you dump it all in at one time, then you kind of cool down your broth to it, and then you're going to get like chunks that just don't blend in well to the broth. Okay, we're going to do our first kind of flip over. So we have on here just a really mild kind of toasting up on it. That's really the first stage, is to heat up the bread, melt the butter, and then we'll start doing our toasting after it, which is crisping up on each side. But with sourdough bread, you've got to do, I always say, 2 flips on each one because it's thicker. It takes a little bit longer to melt that cheese through it. And doing this allows everything to heat up and get to it where you need it to be. Okay, let's mix these cheese in there. And we'll go low and slow. I think I'm going to turn it up to about a 4 now. I had it simmering on a 2, but just a little bit higher now that we've added in the cream and some of the cheese. Here we go. And I know when to add in more cheese is once that cheese has kind of disappeared. That means it's melted into the broth, and then I kind of know it's ready for its next batch.
You have a question? How many people will those sandwiches serve?
The sandwiches, they're big, so they're going to serve 4, even 5 at there with that. But 4, I always try to make my lunchtime for 4, plus or minus. People, I make it for my husband and I, and then for my parents, because all the other kids are kind of off at school. So we get to have a little bit more fun food. And Torn, I will say, Torn comes home from school around like 3 o'clock-ish, and he always is like, so what's my second lunch? Because I do make him lunch for school. I get up at 5:45 in the morning to make this lunch.
You have a question? How do you time everything so well in the kitchen? There's so many different things.
You think you learn and to know when things are going to be done and ready. So let me check this. You know what? Perfect. We've got a little bit of our jiggle there, as you can see, which is what you want. You don't want to cook it until it's completely like cracked, and you need a little jiggle because that's going to give you a moist one. So 30 minutes was perfect on here. Sometimes it can take up to 35, depending on it. So here what we're going to do is you're going to sit and you're going to let this cool. And then you're going to pop it in the fridge. You don't want to pop it in the fridge right away because the heat of this will actually bring your fridge temperature down and can spoil the other stuff in your fridge. But this is our pumpkin cheesecake bars that we made. So we've got a pumpkin cheesecake base with a sweetened cream cheese on there. And then, of course, the bottom is a nice thick layer of our graham cracker crumb base on it. Okay, let's start doing our second toasting here on everything. And this last one that we're going to go through on both sides will give us the nice crispy brown color to it. And then we'll have our cheese nice and melted. You can see it's starting to get a little bit of a melt on there. Okay, let's get this last little bit. I might add in a little bit more cheese, but we'll see once I get this last handful in. Plus, I want to have a little bit of cheese to garnish on top, so we'll shred a little bit more. Beautiful. Now, again, my broccoli and cheddar soup that I do not really put any thickeners in it. I like it to be more of a broth base versus a really thick and, gooey mix base. Delicious. But if you like a thicker one, what I would do to make it thicker is when you are adding the broccoli and sauteing it in, you would add about 1/4 cup of flour, and you would just toss everything with that flour. And then when you slowly add in the broth, that is going to thicken up to a thicker thing. But I prefer a brothier cheddar and broccoli soup. That's my personal preference. You can also, if you want to keep it gluten-free and not use the flour, you could take out about 1/2 cup of the broth right now, mix it with about 1 tablespoon of cornstarch to make kind of a bit of a slurry, and then pour it back in there. And that, when you heat it up, that would thicken up your soup as well. So there's options if you prefer the thicker one, but if you're like me and love a nice thinner broth, this is where it's at.
Your question: could you use potatoes and blend them instead of flour? Would that work?
Potatoes would give you, yes, you could do a little bit of the potato on there. It wouldn't give you so much as a super creamy thing, but more of like a potato, kind of a thicker base that way. But you could definitely use that. And you could blend up some of your broccoli as well. You could also use cauliflower as well to stay in. Use that. And you could blend up some of your broccoli as well. You could also use cauliflower as well to stay in that same flavor profile of broccoli for it, and then blend a little bit of it up there as well. So you could definitely do that. You could even blend up, your broccoli in there. The broccoli is not going to be as creamy as cauliflower or potatoes, but definitely. We're going to save this last little bit right here for our kind of topping it. This is just about perfect. Beautiful. Try it. Delicious. You've got the broccoli notes, you've got the cheddar notes. We got our little thing. So let's get these guys flipped over. Beautiful. Beautiful. So we've got our nice toasted grilled cheeses here, and you can see we're starting to get the good melt on them. So let's grab, I can start getting my plates and everything out so that we can get ready to serve here in just a second. And we'll do my little here we go. And then let me grab my cutting board base. And we're going to slide this guy over here. I'm going to rotate that just a little bit. And that way, trying to get everything over here. That way I can cut my sandwiches on here.
You have a question? Do you know what you're making tonight?
I'm not 100% sure yet. I do. Let's see. I'm trying to think. What do I have to cook up? Oh, you know what I might actually do tonight? I might make some cabbage rolls because I have these leaves of cabbage that I've been saving, and I've got ground beef. So the Polish term for them is it's golubki, but growing up we always called them golumki because it's a recipe from my stepdad's family. And my step grandmother taught me how to make them, and I used to always make them. Now for him as like a special little treat or whatnot. I have changed the recipe over time because her original recipe used like a can of Campbell's tomato soup. A little change it up. I made it a little bit less, processed and more, fresh, which has made it delicious over time. I feel like this. Okay, good. We've got a good melt on this cheese now. So let's check our toasting on here. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Turn these guys off. Oh, this one has like a little heart-shaped bubble on it. Okay. Let's slide our soup over. Let me grab a little bit of this cheese that I'll have ready to top on here. And of course, we can't have our soup without a ladle. Okay. For lunch today, we have our cheddar cheese on our sourdough with ham. So this is our homemade sourdough bread on there, lovely sandwich. And we are going to be serving it with a nice bowl of our broccoli and cheddar soup, full of fresh broccoli, carrots, onion. We made a nice kind of creamier, lighter broth, but still full of flavor. And it's filled with about 2.5 cups of cheddar cheese and chicken bouillon. And then we're going to top it with a little bit more cheddar cheese to give you that cheese melt in there. But the ham and cheese is going to pair beautifully with the broccoli and cheddar soup. And then, of course, for dessert, in about 4 hours, once they've chilled in the fridge, we will have our pumpkin cheesecake bars with our graham cracker crust. We've got our pumpkin cheesecake base and then our vanilla cheesecake swirl. So that's the one you'll have to wait for, but will be delicious when we finally can dig in. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can go to our page, search for the link, click on it, and search for what we cook. So like our broccoli and cheddar or whatnot. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my knives, I've got my hand mixer, I've got my Dutch ovens, all the different things I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.